In this episode, we talk about the Genome India Initiative. We also talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi commissioning 3 advanced naval combatants, INS Surat, INS Nilgiri and INS Vaghsheer. But first we talk about toxic waste being relocated from Bhopal's Union Carbide factory after 40 years. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda and you are listening to 3 Things, the Indian Express news show. After 4 decades, the process of relocating toxic waste from Bhopal's Union Carbide factory took place between 29th December and 1st of Jan when 12 containers carrying 337 metric tons of hazardous waste departed for Pithampur. This waste was generated during pesticide production at the UCIL factory between 1969 and 1984 and was dumped on the premises. The officials said that the waste was transported under tight security through a 250-kilometer-long green corridor. The chosen route was selected to minimize traffic disruptions at night. The containers were accompanied by police escorts, ambulances, fire brigades, and a quick response team. Each container was manned by 2 drivers. To learn what caused the delay in the removal of the waste from the site and what lies ahead, we have the Indian Express's Nikhil Ghanekar joining us in this segment. Nikhil, what development led to the waste being transported now in January 2025?
So, the most recent development with regards to the disposal of waste from the Union Carbide factory in Bhopal is linked to one order that the Madhya Pradesh High Court's Jabalpur bench had passed on 3rd December 2004. This was a bench that was headed by the Jabalpur bench Chief Justice, Justice Kait, and another Justice, Justice Vivek Jain. So they pulled up the Madhya Pradesh High Court for their inertia of so many years over the disposal of the waste and said that it was a really sorry state of affairs because removal of the toxic waste from the plant, decommissioning of some of the plant's reactors, and removal of the contaminants that have been spreading in the surrounding soil and groundwater were of paramount importance and requirement for the safety of the people of Bhopal. Then they directed the Principal Secretary of the Bhopal Gas Tragedy Relief and Rehabilitation Department of the MP government to perform its duties and ordered an immediate cleanup of the factory site in Bhopal and take all remedial measures for removal and safe disposal of the toxic material. Now, the point to note here is that this whole issue is linked to a case that was filed back in 2004 by a Bhopal resident named Alok Pratap Singh, who is actually passed away now. And his prayer in the Madhya Pradesh High Court was that the toxic waste that has been lying around in the Union Carbide factory, which produced pesticides up until 1984, should be removed, and the plant site should undergo remediation because of the contamination that had seeped into the groundwater and soil. Now, this petition has been so long drawn that it is going on till now, and this petitioner also sought that the Dow Chemical Company, Dow, which bought over Union Carbide of India Limited, the subsidiary of Union Carbide, be held responsible for this cleanup and also sought damages.
Right, and how did the High Court respond to this petition?
After this petition was filed in 2005, a task force was formed by the High Court to give recommendations on how this waste should be disposed of. The center also got involved in through the Department of Chemicals and Petrochemicals and requested the court to direct Dow Chemicals and Union Carbide to deposit an advance of 100 crores towards the remediation and disposal cost. However, this was disputed by the company running the plant, which owned the plant at that time. And many orders and many decisions were taken through the course of this litigation. Some of the important ones to note here for the most recent development is the fact that in June 2005, the MP High Court ordered that the waste that was lying around on the premises. Now, we have to understand that there are different areas of the plant that are affected by this waste. Some of it was overground, just dumped, visibly dumped there. Some of it was in waste dumps which were below the ground. Some of them were in solar evaporation ponds. These are ponds which essentially use the solar evaporation techniques to stabilize the waste. And some were in sludge form. So in June 2005, 396 metric tons of waste was collected from the overground facility and stored within the plant premises itself. And this job was handed over to Ramki Enviro company at that time. Eventually, what happened is that MP High Court ordered that this disposal should take place in Madhya Pradesh itself at a facility in Pithampur, which is run by the Ramki company, which is now rebranded as Resustainability Limited. And Ramki company or Resustainability Limited was given the contract of disposing this waste off in November 2021. And the center also approved a sanctioned an amount of 126 crore for disposal of this waste.
And Nikhil, can you elaborate how this hazardous waste was transported to Pithampur?
To begin with, the Bhopal Gas Tragedy Relief and Rehabilitation Department is currently the custodian of this plant site since the late 90s, and they are the ones who are supervising this entire process. They also roped in the Madhya Pradesh Pollution Control Board and the Central Pollution Control Board, and along with the private company Resustainability, they together drew up a plan on transportation of this waste. The fundamental law that is or regulation that is followed for transportation of such kinds of waste is the hazardous waste management rules. This private company's workforce, around 40 to 50 people, were at this site. The task of collecting this already stored away waste began on 29th of December. And it took nearly 4 days for this waste that was stored since 2005 to be picked up again. It was picked up and repacked in high density polyethylene bags. They were carefully lifted using forklifts. They were weighed before that and they were placed in containers. And after that, what happened is that they created this green corridor of sorts, which we typically see being used for medical surgeries and procedures. The intent here was not to transport it quickly, but essentially for safety purposes, since the waste that was being transported is hazardous in nature. So this corridor went from, this route that was followed was from Bhopal through Devas and then eventually to go to Pithampur, which is a town located 30 kilometers away from Indore.
Right. And what does this waste contain exactly?
Essentially, these are chemicals that were dumped and byproducts, not exactly byproducts, but organic compounds, chemicals that were used in making these pesticides. They were the ones that were dumped on the premises of this site. Now, what does this exactly contain? In terms of quantum, this is 337 metric tons of this waste. It is 162 metric tons of excavated contaminated soil, 92 metric tons of naphthol, which is a organic compound and used in production of dyes, dye intermediates, and also has applications as insecticide. It contains sevin. Sevin is essentially a product name for a pesticide, which originally it is known as Carbide, and it is one of the pesticides that was manufactured at the Union Carbide factory. And the other components are 54 metric tons of semi-processed pesticide and 29 metric tons of residue from the reactor of the Union Carbide plant. So these are the contents of the waste that is taken to Pithampur.
And Nikhil, can you tell us what does the incineration process actually mean?
To simply put, incineration is essentially the process, the scientific process of burning waste which is hazardous in nature. It could also be non-hazardous, but hazardous waste, what happens is that because they contain chemicals and organic compounds which can harm the groundwater and soil if they are stored directly in the environment, they are typically incinerated because their volume has to be controlled. So incineration provides that technology to burn and combust these chemicals and control the volume of the waste at a faster rate.
Right. And Nikhil, what kind of arrangements need to be made in order to conduct such a massive activity?
So typically what happens is that first small samples are taken from hazardous waste materials to check what kind of composition that they have. So let's say in the case of hazardous waste from the Union Carbide factory, one trial was conducted in 2015 and samples were also taken as per protocol back in 2015 and they revealed that this hazardous waste contains heavy metals such as chromium, lead, nickel, mercury. They also contain fluorides and bromides. So that determines what is the amount of heat and temperatures at which they need to be burnt, or more importantly, how much waste can be incinerated or burnt in an hour, how much quantity of waste. So what happens is that when such hazardous waste containing chemicals and metals is put into the incinerator facility, they also require certain additives to control them, to make the process of incineration replication either stable and also faster. So as according to scientists who are involved in the process, they explained to us that they use lime as one of the additives in a ratio of 1:1. So let's say if 10 kgs of waste is added, they add 10 kgs of lime along with it to make the process smoother. When this waste burns, then it creates residue, which is in the form of ash, and also certain gases, pollutants are released. So inside these incinerator facilities, they have components fixed inside which can separate these pollutants, the gaseous part of it, and separates the ash. The gases known as flue gases which are emitted during the incineration process, they have to be controlled using components such as cyclone separators, back filters and scrubbers. These are essentially components which are fitted inside the incinerator so that the pollutants can be controlled. So these are some of the steps that are followed while incinerating this waste. Now, the residue that is generated because of this activity is typically collected and it is stored in within the facility which incinerates the waste in landfills. And these landfills have to be, as per protocol, the environmental regulations and rules, they have to be stored within membranes and double-lined areas so that the ash does not seep into the groundwater and contaminate the area.
And Nikhil, we understand that the residents of Pithampur have raised certain concerns. So, can you tell us what they are?
So Pithampur's residents essentially have issue with this waste being burnt in their backyard, because we have to understand a little bit about this town and why they have concerns about the environmental norms being not followed. So Pithampur is primarily an industrial town, which means that it's already populated by automobile industries, chemical industries, pharmaceutical industries, and some of these are highly polluting in nature. And these activities, industrial activities, have been going on in Pithampur since the mid 1980s, around about the same time when the Bhopal accident happened. So over the years, the town's groundwater, its air has become polluted as per the people who live there. The water that is found in their fields, in their borewells, is not environmentally safe according to them. And they also have reservations on the kind of environmental norms that are followed by the hazardous waste processing facility of this private company, been given the tender, the contract for managing the Bhopal factory waste. So they have complained in the past to the Pollution Control Board of the stink and the odor that emanates from these local factories. They have complained of having skin issues and the water being too high in salinity. So their concerns are essentially about not having trust in the local authorities with regards to whether the environmental norms will be followed for such a sensitive job. And they have just one demand, that this should not happen in Pithampur. This should be taken to some other place.
Right. And have any similar exercises been conducted before as well?
It has happened earlier, but contaminated waste from a site like similar to Bhopal has not really been noted in India before. There has been an instance where mercury contamination that had happened in Kodaikanal because of Hindustan Unilever. That contaminated site was cleaned up, but that waste was not disposed of within India. In fact, it was transported to the US. So there have been very few examples of contaminated industrial areas which have been cleaned up. However, it is important to note here that many states do have hazardous waste processing facilities, and they do handle hazardous waste from time to time.
And next, we'll talk about the Genome India project, which was approved by the government in 2020 with the aim of creating a comprehensive catalogue of genetic variations found in the Indian population. Last year, the initiative achieved a significant milestone when researchers completed sequencing 10,000 healthy genomes from different regions of the country. These genomes represent 99 distinct populations and have led to the creation of a comprehensive genetic map of India. Now the project is moving into its second phase, which will involve sequencing the genomes of individuals with specific diseases. This will enable researchers to compare the diseased genomes with the healthy ones, helping identify genes that may be responsible for or predispose a person to certain diseases. The diseases most likely to be included in the list include various types of cancer, chronic conditions such as diabetes, and different neurological or neurodegenerative diseases. Last year, we spoke to the Indian Express's Anonna Dutt about the significance of this project and what exactly genome sequencing involves. Today we are airing that conversation again. So Anona, let's start from the basics. What is a genome and what is genome sequencing?
So basically, genome is, say, the body's instruction manual that we get from our parents. It's everything that the body needs to sort of create the physical form, and it decides the traits like what color your hair would be, what kind of eyes you would have. Every physical trait is decided by your genetic makeup. And this genetic makeup is actually made of 4 letters or 4 bases, A, C, G, and T. Now, these 4 letters actually come together in pairs, and a complete human genome has 3 billion of these pairs. So, when we say we have to sequence a human genome, we have to sequence these 3 billion base pairs and create and look at the entire instruction manual that you came with. I mean, without getting into too much technicality, but when you have to sequence the genome, 3 billion is a big number. So scientists actually break it down into smaller parts and tag them, and then sequence it in a sequencer and then join it together to form this complete genome. And this is what the project has done. They've taken the samples from 10,000 human beings and sequenced their instruction manual.
Right. And can you tell us more about the Genome India project and when did this initiative begin?
So basically, Genome India, it's a government-funded project which basically aims to create like a genetic map of the entire country. So what does the genetic profile of our population look like? That's the basic question that this project aims to answer. So scientists from 20 different institutes across the country have collected 10,000 samples from people across the country, healthy people. Among the tribal population, it's from the remotest part of the countries and from the cities. So it's a representative mix of our country. It covers 99 distinct population groups from our country. And they have now sequenced all these 10,000 genomes and created a huge database where all this information can be stored. This information now can then be used for research purposes, clinical purposes, for creating new targeted therapies, or even providing the already available targeted therapy to people who might benefit from this. So there are various uses of this database, but the project essentially looks at creating the map in the first place.
Okay, so can you elaborate on these uses? Like, how will the project help Indian scientists and medical professionals?
So, like I said, it will create a genetic map of our country. So now we will know what are the variations that exist in India. There could be certain variations that exist only in India, that don't exist anywhere else in the world. There could be certain genetic diseases, the rare genetic conditions probably which exists only in India or very rarely elsewhere in the world. So these are the things that the map will help. So take for example a condition like cardiac arrest, right? Every population has certain risk factors that are common. But in India, there is a particular gene that is present called MYBPC3. So this mutation is present in 4.5% in the Indian population, but not so commonly found in population globally. So it will help, of course, in finding these rare causes of certain diseases. It will also help in the treatment of rare diseases. So for example, if we know what kind of rare disease and how frequently they appear in our population, then we can find treatments that can help these population. It can also help in finding targets, new targets for these conditions. So if we know that this particular mutation causes a certain disease, then we can create a product or a pharmaceutical drug, something that can change that mutation and cure that disease. So that is the treatment part. Then of course, if we know that target, it can also help us in diagnosing. So you can create diagnostics. Or it can help in preventing certain complications. So for example, you can identify resistance indicating variants. What does that mean? Basically, it can tell you whether a person is likely to, be resistant to certain medications, certain anesthetics, or certain antivirals.
And Anona, we are talking about 10,000 genomes, which is not a small number. So, how has this data been collected and how long did the project take?
So basically, when I say genetic data, we need some sort of genetic sample. In this case, it was blood samples collected from, actually the researchers collected it from around 20,000 individuals across the country. And that blood sample has also been saved for future research in these institutes. But then for 10,000 people, they have taken the DNA from within this blood, isolated the DNA, and then they have sequenced it. Now, when I talk about sequencing, at one point, so if we talk about the first human genome, that the sequence was completed in 2003, and it took 13 years to complete the first sequence. But the technology has completely changed now. It's so much easier to do it, and a complete human genome with all the quality checks and everything in place can be completed, say, in 5 days now. So the sequencing itself did not take too much time. It took the scientists about 3 to 4 months to sequence the 10,000 genomes. But what took time was collecting the samples from distant areas and, in populations who live in very isolated places. So that was what took majority of the time. The project was approved in 2020, and of course there were delays because of the pandemic. And finally this week, the whole 10,000 genome sequencing was announced that it has been completed.
Right. And have similar projects been conducted elsewhere?
Sure. So countries other than India have also been doing this because it makes sense to have a population-based, map of what are the different types of variations that exist in the population. There are projects similar to this in, say, UK and United States, and they are sequencing a higher number. So about lakh sequencing is what I think they have targeted. But even the 10,000 number is quite a big achievement, seeing that we announced our first complete human genome in 2009. And then we have been doing it, but in smaller projects. But this is the first time we have done a very big representative sample and of completely healthy people.
And Anonna, tell us what makes this project unique.
This project right now, it covers 99 distinct populations from across India, but our population actually has a huge diversity with 4,600 distinct population groups. And the practice of endogamy or marrying within the same community has resulted in these groups actually preserving a lot of their genetic makeup. So it will also sort of provide a very unique perspective. Like in most global databases, you would not see so much variation, but we do have 4,600 different groups, 99 of which have been covered by this project.
And next, we talk about the 3 advanced naval combatants commissioned by the Prime Minister. Yesterday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi commissioned 3 advanced naval combatants, INS Surat, INS Nilgiri and INS Vaghsheer, in a ceremony at the Naval Dockyard in Mumbai. Dedicating the frontline combatants to the nation, he termed the occasion a giant leap forward in the Navy's empowerment and self-reliance. Describing it as a historic day, PM Modi said, quote, India has emerged a global leader, strong, dependable and responsible in Indian Ocean. We are committed to countering terrorism and making the seafront safe and secure, unquote. He further added, quote, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj had given new strength and a new vision to the Indian Navy. Today, on his holy land, we are taking a very big step towards strengthening the Navy of the 21st century. This is the first time when a destroyer, a frigate, and a submarine, all 3 are being commissioned together, unquote. He said that the Indian Navy was marching to glory and achieving the goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The commissioning of these vessels marks a significant step in India's defense self-reliance and indigenous shipbuilding capabilities. All 3 platforms have been designed and built entirely in India, reflecting the country's growing expertise in defense production. INS Nilgiri, the lead ship of the Project 17A stealth frigate class, represents a significant advancement over the Shivalik class frigates. Designed by the Indian Navy's Warship Design Bureau and built at the Mazagaon Dock Shipbuilders Limited, It incorporates advanced features for enhanced survivability and seakeeping, reflecting the next generation of indigenous frigates. INS Surat, the fourth and final vessel of the Project 15B stealth destroyer class, is a follow-on the Kolkata-class destroyers. It incorporates improvements in design and capability, making it a critical addition to the Navy's surface fleet. Like INS Nilgiri, it has also been designed by the Warship Design Bureau and constructed at the MDL. And lastly, INS Vaghsheer is the sixth and final submarine under the Scorpion-class Project 75. It is a diesel-electric submarine designed for multiple roles, including anti-surface warfare, anti-submarine warfare, and intelligence gathering. It features modular construction, enabling future upgrades such as air-independent propulsion technology. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.